Now, in the previous session, we have seen about creating in the previous session, we have seen how to authenticate yourself with with the username password. In the second session, we have seen about how to authenticate yourself with the code format. In the OAuth, we have seen two formats. One is the code format, other one is the username password format. Let us go to the third one, which is a client credentials. There is a third format of authentication, which is called client credentials. Let us understand how these client credentials will work. I want to integrate with the Facebook and get the access token. So if you want to integrate with the Facebook, log in like a developer. Developer.facebook.com. Then we have list of applications. Let me check my password is right or wrong. Chalo. Now log into the Facebook as a developer. Add a new app. Create a application. Now we had integrate Facebook login. Confirm. Here we have app ID, app secret. We have app ID, app secret. App ID, app secret. Then let us go and see how to register. Vishal, mute your mic. And then let me go to advanced. We check. Let me check one by one. There are some changes. Website. Choose category education. I'm in the basics. I came to website registration. Then I made category as Then we had advanced. Then what else we have? Then app review. Permissions and features. Okay. Permissions and features. Okay. We're just trying to create an app here. Okay. So let me show you. Let me show you what we have done from beginning. I'll recreate structure. Let us see this. We need to go through the documentation to see what all the settings we have to put on. Okay, Facebook. So this is not our Salesforce. We are supposed to read the documentation and enable the required things. So what I'm doing, app integration, create an app, not a robo, submit. Then Facebook login, web, save. Okay. Go to settings. Go to Facebook login settings. Enable services. Redirect URL. Login. Then check whether this is valid or not. Right. Okay. Then go to settings. Settings. Basic. make it enabled. So first we enabled Facebook app. We just created a connected app in the Facebook. Like how you created a connected app in the LinkedIn, box.com. Similarly, I also managed to create a connected app in the Facebook. Now we have application ID, application secret. Let me create now. So without going to the documentation, whatever the knowledge we had, just we try to apply this. If something goes wrong, we'll try to go through the documentation of Facebook. Now in this case, what I required. So what is my client ID? So look at the format what we give. Endpoint URL, client ID, client secret, read URL, grant type equal to client credentials. Then make a request. Set endpoint. request. First, I was supposed to register this in the remote site settings. Go to this. Basically, this is also one of the format of authentication where we pass the client ID, client secret, and read URL. This format is called client credential format. Here we are going to give only client ID, client secret. In the first case, we give client ID, client secret, username, password. In the second one, we gave client ID, read URL, they gave a code, client ID, client secret, code, read URL. If I give, it will take you to the login page where I enter the credentials of the user, login. Here we have a client ID, client secret. Only we are giving a client ID, client secret. So let me give you this. Excuse. So what is the response we received here? Access token. Once you got the access token, what does it mean? We are connected to Facebook. Once you connected to the Facebook, how do you get your data? Again, go to the documentation. Now, if I want to get my profile pic, what is the URL? What is the service? Because once you got the access token, connection between Salesforce and Facebook is done. You have connected to the Facebook and Salesforce. Connection is established. Access token received. Now, if you want to post a message, what is the URL? If you want to get my friends list, what is the URL? That you need to go through the Facebook documentation, read it, and make a request. Did you get my point? So establishing a connection is using a OAuth. Once we have used a OAuth, connection is established. Now we have proved our authentication. We generated an access token. Access token generated means what? We have established a connection with the Facebook from the Salesforce. Then go through the Facebook documentation, how to make a request, how to request a friends list, how to post a message. That's all you can do by passing this access token. Are you clear about this? So what is the format of authentication we have used? What is the format of authentication? Client credentials. Now, what are the three formats we have seen? Username, password. Second one. What is the second one we have? Code format. Fourth one is application. This is two applications are trying to communicate with each other. They don't want to recognize the user. They want to recognize the application. Now it is not asking me my username, password. It is not interested on who is logging. It is a connection between two applications. It is a connection between two applications. It is a connection between two applications. Are you getting my point? So code format, username, password, client credential. And there is one more concept called refresh token. What is this refresh token? Whenever I use a code format, along with the access token, they will also send one more token called refresh token. Now, try to understand this refresh token. I hope you followed. Simply, what is that? Client ID, client secret, username. Okay, read at URL. They are going to get access token. Now, when I go for the code format, what is the first step? In the code format, what is the first step? Request code. They will send you code. Then request. Access token. Then they'll send you access token, refresh token. Again, if you want to request for one more access token, what should I do? Again, request code. They'll send you code. Again, request for the access token. They'll send you access token. Instead of taking this all procedure, if you simply pass refresh token, they'll send you access token. Second time when you want to request the access token again, don't do the entire procedure. Simply send the refresh token. They'll give you access token. Are you getting my point? But how many times? Only one time. Now what is the procedure? I will request the code. You will send me the code. I will send you the code. You will send me access token, refresh token. Next time if I want one more access token, I will not make all this procedure. Simply I will follow what? Send access token. You will be getting send a refresh token. You will be getting access token. How many times I can do this? Only one. Right. Generally, this is the question asked in the interviews. What is the purpose of a refresh token? Refresh token is used to generate access token. How many times? Only one time request. I hope you're good. Now, overall, what are the formats we have seen? Now, look at the point. Now, look at the point, everybody. If you go with HTTP, they may ask you to go with login credentials. They may ask you, send your username, password as a body, like that. Or else, they'll ask you API call. Okay. No. We have authentication server. Then, in this case, we go with username, password, client credential. Third one, in case if you are passing any certification, you will be passing. So this is the procedure of authentication. You may pass the authentication if the third party people are not using the authentication server. They are writing a code for authentication. They may ask you to send, pass your username, password, pass your mobile number. Some code will be required for authentication. They ask you to pass login credential. Second one, API key. They will generate a key and give you reproduce the key. Right. But generally, a commercial application will go with the authorization server, where we go with OAuth 2.0, where we have username, password format, client credential format, code format, refresh token. The third one is certificate-based authentication. This is the authentication mechanism what you passed. They'll ask you, what is when you say, I am using a REST API, they'll ask you, what format of authentication have you followed? You mentioned this too. Client credentials are code format. Generally, these are the formats which are used in the market. Right, boss? Clear? So, OAuth is what? Authorization server. OAuth is what? Authorization server. It is only going to generate access token. It is only going to generate access token. Once the access token is generated, we can request the resource. Okay. Then, what is the protocol you are using? HTTP. What is the response format? JSON or XML. In the REST API, representational state transfer protocol will be using HTTP protocol internally. So we define resource using REST. We define the resource using REST API. Now people who are consuming it, The consumer, what do you do? You make a request using and authorization. This is what we are going to use. I hope people by now got the clarity. Resource service is defined using REST. Consumer is going to make a request using HTTP protocol with the following authorization or open for everyone. Then consume the resource. The format of the response, what we are going to get? Default. Now, one access token will be used for only one request. One access token will be used for only one request. One access token will be used for only one request. I hope you are good with this. Clear? Okay. Now, let me go to writing a test classes for this. How do you define a test classes? How you define test classes for this? Let me make it. Okay. Now, listen to the format. If I am making a request to third party system, look at the point. If I am making a request to you, you are going to send a data. Whatever the data you are sending, with the help of the data, I am going to perform some action. Am I right? This is general question. I am going to make it. I am a consumer. I am writing a test class. There are two types of test class. If you are a provider, how do you test it? If you are a consumer, how do you test it? Now let us say I am a consumer. If I am a consumer, I make a request to you. You will send a resource to me. That so okay, data what you are sending, with the help of that I am going to perform an action. Now let us take an example. Okay, fine. Let me define. Now, this is my program. What is the purpose here? I'm going to make a request to that. Whatever the body you are giving, with that I'm creating my new account. I'm making a call to you. Whatever the data you are sending, based on the data, I was creating my new account. This is my functionality. Now I want to test it. Now, if you want to test this, if I want to test it, third-party system will give a sample data for testing. Now it is a third-party system. I cannot make a request to you to test the function. You are a third-party vendor. I cannot make a call to you to test your function. Right? So what should I do? I have to assume that. You are giving some response. If I make a request to you, what is the format of response I am expecting? That response I have to create as a dummy. I have to create a dummy response and I have to test it on it. Whatever the format in which you are supposed to send a response to me, in the same format, I am going to create a dummy response and I am going to run the logic on the dummy response. If I make a request to you, you are going to send a response. What is the response you are going to send to me? That response I am going to create as a dummy response. Similar, equivalent dummy response I am going to create. When I make a request to you, whatever the response you are supposed to send me, I am going to make a equivalent dummy response and I am going to test my functionality on the dummy response. If you want to create the dummy response, we need to go for HTTP callout mark. HTTP callout mark. I need to go for what? HTTP callout mark. I need to go for HTTP callout mark. I was supposed to create implements HTTP callout mark. So first, I'm creating at the rate of. Now, any class which is implementing HTTP callout mark has to implement a method. Look at the point. If you want to create a dummy response, we need to create a callout mark. HTTP callout mark is to create a dummy response. When I make a call to third party, what is the response they are going to generate? The equivalent response I am going to create as a dummy here. To do that, class implements HTTP callout mark. And any class that implements a interface, it has to define all the methods. What is the name of the method? Respond. Take a request, give the response here. I'm giving. Get the endpoint. If I received request from, if I received the request from this URL, now what I'm doing, if you receive the request from that URL with this method, then create a dummy response. So look at this. I am creating my dummy response. If you receive the request from that URL with this method, whatever the request you have get, take that. If you receive the request from that URL with this method, then I create a dummy response and I told set body equal to Satish.tp. Right? So what is the data that will be sent to that particular class? Satish.tp is the data which will be sent. Now I have created a dummy response here. I have created a dummy response. With the help of this dummy response, I am going to make a test classes. Now, how you define a test class? Each test. First one, set callout mark. Set mark. Test dot set mark. HTTP callout mark dot class. Then what is the dummy response I created? Create an object for the pass that object. Then boss, I'm saying if you make a request to this, this is the dummy response what I'm going to get. If you make a request to this, if you make a request to that third party URL, this is the dummy response I'm going to get, which I'm taking as a dummy. I'm creating a test data, dummy response I'm creating. Now, how do you test this? What is the name of the method? Call me. We call this what is the response I gave? Now, what was the service here? Tell me first. I am going to make a request to that URL. Whatever the response you are getting, with the response I have to create an account. If I want to test this, I require a response. But I cannot make a request to third party for testing my service. There is a reason I only created a response. Whatever the response the third party is going to send, the sample response I only created. And I told test classes, boss, you take the sample response from this class. You take the sample response from this class and give me the result. Now I made a call to call me. When you made a call to call me, it is making a request to third party and the dummy response is coming. If the dummy response is coming, based on the dummy response, logic will run. Then I am checking, boss, if the web service is running properly, method is running properly, whatever the response I give, with the response one account should be created. That's what I'm testing. Select the count of number of accounts. Okay, from account where name equal to Satish REST API. What is this Satish REST API? Dummy response what I give. Run it. This is what I got it. Right. Let me do one more example for you. First, how you define the dummy response? Implements HTTP callout mark. If a class is implementing a HTTP callout mark, it has to implement response, respond, request. String endpoint equal to request dot. Now let us say For your understanding purpose, I'll write one extra line here. Try to understand this line. Whatever the request object I created, when you're setting, if you want to get the parameters what you kept for request, I'll be using here. We have created a request set. When you use the get methods, what we are going to get? This is the format we are going to get. Now, I'm also giving here I'll make it here. I'll remove the body. Map of string comma. Request dot so what is the format we received here? What is the method? Request dot get params, right? So what was that method? Get because while testing, we need to understand the format in which the requests are going on. Okay. So here we need to check it out. Look at the format. Request we got. Request dot set get body. Then in the body, I'm going to serialize it. Just we need to serialize it and write a code. So I'm just giving JSON parser JS equal. Then I'm just trying to create some dummy functionality here. Name city age. Now what was that? I created a dummy response here. What is the dummy response I gave? Boss, whatever the body you gave, I'm going to pass student class as a body. I'm going to pass the student class as a body. You're passing the student class as a body. In that student, if a name and city is not equal to blank, then say it's a success. Otherwise say it's a otherwise say failure. Otherwise say failure. Now in the request, you are going to send some body. The body is in the form of student. I deserialized it. I verified because the data should be sent in the form of string only. Then I am verifying here system.asset. Try to understand this. Now the service I am writing here. Look at the service class I am writing. Now I'm making a request. To that URL, I'm making a post request. Student initialized. To this URL, making a post request, I'm passing a student object. We pass that, we're going to get a response. Request. This was my class pass. I am making a request to third-party system by passing the student. I was making a request to third-party system by passing a student. Otherwise, I'll take. I am making a request to third-party system by passing the student data. If I make a request to that, they are supposed to send success or fail. They are supposed to send a message called success or a failure. Now, third party will be sending a success or a failure. Okay. This is the dummy response. Whatever the student data you are passing, I deserialized. I took the value of name and city, verified if both of them are entered success, not entered failure. This is the dummy response, which I have created to support my operation. Basically, what is your requirement? You are sending a request to them with the student name and city and phone number, age. Now they are going to send you a reply of success or failure. You make a request to them by passing student, they are going to send you success or failure. Then how you test it? What is the first point that we have to do, boss? First, I have to create a object for dummy response. I have to create it. Test dot set mark. What is the interface we implemented? HTTP. What is the object we are passing? So we included dummy response here. What is the class we are going to test now? Then I call when you call that, because I passed name and city, result should be what? And again, I'm creating one more time. Now try to understand this, the requirement one more time. This is my class pass. What are you doing? Making a request to this URL by passing the data passing the data. What data you are passing? Student object. The student object I am passing. You cannot pass a student object directly because in the HTTP request, everything that you pass should be a string. So what did I do? Converted the student object into the JSON string. Then I passed. When you make a request to that URL, response will come. What is the response you are expecting? Success or failure. Now, there is a third party who has to send me. Now, whatever the logic that third party is doing, I created the same dummy logic here. Now, whatever the student you have sent, the student is deserialized. They told if student name and city is blank, failed, not blank, success. Now, they are going to give a dummy response of success or failure. That's what I created here. Now, let me run this. Got it? So, as per this, what is the response you are expecting? The dummy response I have to create, then I have tested. Previous example was a get method. That's the reason I have taken a post method here. So, converted the object into the string and converted it. Right? Are you clear? So, how do you create a test classes? First, you are supposed to create dummy response. HTTP callout mark is used to create dummy response for testing. It will create a dummy response for testing. Because I cannot make a call to the third party for asking a dummy response. That's why we have created a dummy response. With respect to the dummy response, we are going to test your functionality. Right? Sure. So that's all from my.
Sir, one doubt.
Yes.